Hey guys, welcome into the 14. I'm Nick Cole, and we're breaking down all of Week 5's SEC football action from a betting perspective. Today, we're talking about the Arkansas Razorbacks visiting the Georgia Bulldogs in one of the most anticipated SEC games of the week. This game is actually going to be played at noon Eastern at Sanford Stadium in Athens, Georgia. The game will be televised on ESPN. The opening line for this game was Georgia minus 18, and it's moved slightly. The Bulldogs are favored by 18.5 as of the recording of this video. The over-under was 50.5, and it's dropped to 48.5. Bring in our betting analyst, Christopher Smith. Christopher, this is an unexpected treat here for SEC fans with two top 10 teams playing in this Week 5 game. What are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that it's getting the old Jefferson Pilot 3 days, noon spot, 11 a.m. Central. And, College game day will be on campus. The only thing that I'm sad about is that Larry Munson isn't here to give the call on the radio. So we have some great audio from it, but should be an exciting game. Why don't we get into Nick's news and notes and take us through what's happening around these programs as we head into Saturday's game?
Sure. I'll start with some weather and some injuries. First of all, the weather report looks really good for Saturday. Since we're getting that noon kickoff, we're going to be through the heat of the day, but kickoff temperature will be about 81 degrees, may jump a couple degrees as the game goes on, but it's mostly sunny, and the wind's going to be 5 miles an hour below for most of the game. So it should be a really clean, easy track for betting, for picking a betting side there. From an injuries standpoint, we've got a pretty lengthy list here and some names that are worth monitoring as kickoff comes along. First of all, on Georgia's side, tight end Darnell Washington and defensive back Tyke Smith seem on track to play against Arkansas. They haven't played yet this season, so that's kind of a big boost for the Bulldogs. Wide receiver Arian Smith and Karis Johnson are both probable, so the Bulldogs will get a little bit of relief there as well. They've had some depth issues at wide receiver. Starting quarterback JT Daniels only played the first quarter against Vanderbilt last week, and it was initially thought, well, they're just blowing out Vanderbilt, but it seems like he may actually have a lat issue. He had recovered from an oblique issue earlier in the season, and Kirby Smart said that it had bothered him a little bit in that Vanderbilt game, which is part of the reason they decided to pull him out early. They're just going to try to limit his reps in practice this week, so I would expect that he probably plays. And then their defensive tackle Julian Rochester is out, and linebacker Ryan Davis also out. On the Arkansas side, all the discussion is about two of their star players. KJ Jefferson left the game against Texas A&M last week with an injury, and he's on track to play, but has been a little bit sore and a little bit slow to get back into work this week at practice. And also Treylon Burks is also sore, they say. Sam Pittman said that they're not necessarily full speed with those two star players, but I'm anticipating that both will play. First, I want to know, is Arkansas really a top 10 team? They're now the number 8 team in the country, and they're not really sneaking up on anybody. And they're going in one of the toughest environments in the country in Sanford Stadium and play a number 2 Georgia team that's already pretty battle tested, or at least that we think that they are. So this is going to be probably Sam Pittman's biggest test in year 2. I'm really excited to see what they look like when you put them up against one of the top teams in the country. The answer to who wins this game might simply be whose quarterback can stay healthy and on the field for the entire 4 quarters. Like I mentioned earlier, JT Daniels dealing with a lat issue, left the game after the first quarter at Vanderbilt, and KJ Jefferson left the game in the second half for Arkansas as they beat Texas A&M. So both of those guys nursing some injuries, and if they can't make it all the way through, will it be Stetson Bennett? Will it be Malik Hornsby that has to step up and make plays? Christopher, what are you thinking about this game from a betting perspective?
Well, I think it will be a tougher test for Georgia's defense. But, Clemson's defense is still maybe as good as Georgia's is and the best in the country. So looking at Georgia's defense, they're inexperienced on the back end, and they may be vulnerable in their secondary to a degree. They've tried really hard to kind of hide that by the way they've schemed this year. And you look at Arkansas's offense, they've thrown the ball 84 times and they've rushed 188 times. So clearly it's very, very heavily slanted toward the run. Now, by any metric you look at, Georgia is a top 10 rushing defense in the country. And Texas A&M ran the ball for 4.0 yards per carry against Arkansas ran the ball for 4.0 yards per carry against A&M. And that was despite a perfect game script for Arkansas. Get out to a lead, play a team with a bad offense, run the ball over and over again. And Georgia's defense is better than Texas A&M's. I don't think Arkansas will be able to run the ball in this game. So basically, the game for Arkansas's offense comes down to, can KJ Jefferson and Treylon Burks create some explosive plays, hit Georgia with some magic? They've been able to do it the last few games, and we'll find out if they're both healthy enough and good enough to do it. Georgia's pass offense is 6th in EPA per play, and that's without almost their entire 2 deep at tight end and receiver for most of the season. So we have this image of our minds, probably in our minds, of the Georgia pass offense. And outside of a few games last season at the end of the year when they were really throwing well, most people kind of picture Georgia as not really that good of a passing team still. But they've won by 49, 27, and 62 points in their last 3 games. And they haven't really needed to throw the ball. So even against Clemson, I mean, the Clemson offense did nothing all game. They didn't really have to get aggressive in the passing game. Now, just in terms of the betting market, Arkansas is 11-3 against the spread since Sam Pittman arrived in Fayetteville. That's fantastic. But at some point, you got to wonder, at what point have the odds makers finally adjusted enough and actually see Arkansas correctly? And it's got to be coming soon if it isn't here already. SP Plus, the Bill Connolly system at ESPN, pegs this game as Georgia by 14.5. The line's 18.5. Maybe there is still a little value in Arkansas, but we've got to be getting close to a high point in terms of the market perception of Arkansas at this point. Nick, who are you taking in this game from a betting standpoint, and tell us why?
Yeah, so I look at this from an unscientific perspective and say, if Arkansas truly is anywhere near the 8th best team in the country, and sure, they're going on the road, but if we're giving them 18.5 points, I don't necessarily think they're going to contend to win this game, but I do think they can contend to cover this game and maybe cover it pretty easily if it's a low-scoring game like we may be anticipating here. So give me Arkansas plus 18.5, and I'm just going to hope that the Hogs can keep it within a couple touchdowns and we'll be just fine. On the over-under, I feel like this one's actually kind of interesting in that, Georgia is averaging 42 points a game themselves, but they get the number 1 scoring defense in the country, holding opponents to 5.8 points per game. And Arkansas, similarly, averaging 35 points a game, but actually ranks 11th in FBS at 14.5 points allowed per game. So both of those teams, when you look at their totals individually, add up right around to that 48, 49 point total, which we're staring at to bet on, but they're doing it in a very lopsided way in their favor. So when you put them against each other, man, I don't know which direction you go. I think that your analysis is pretty smart to say there's going to be a lot of running in this game. At least Arkansas will be trying to run this game. And so I'm going to take the under, but I don't know that I would bet it with my real money. How about you?
Yeah, so I'm definitely taking Arkansas plus 18.5. And part of that reason is I think that Barry Odom's defense does an excellent job of preventing big plays. So that also correlates with the under. So I'm taking under 48.5. I think Arkansas, really what you're afraid of in this game, if you're betting on Arkansas or if you're betting on the over, if you're betting on the over, you're afraid of Treylon Burks hitting some deep balls and scoring on some explosive plays. And if you're betting on Arkansas, or the over, you're also afraid of Georgia's passing game hitting on some big plays, because I think people who have not watched, if you're an Arkansas fan, you haven't watched a ton of Georgia, they're actually not nearly as good as you might think at running the football. And Arkansas's defense is very good at defending the run. And Arkansas's defense is very good at preventing big play passes. And honestly, despite all the injuries, Georgia's offense is really good at throwing the ball. They're very efficient. They're very successful. So I think the total and the side honestly come down to, can Arkansas prevent big plays and whether or not Treylon Burks can get loose for the Hogs. So I'm going to say the under 48.5 and Arkansas plus 18.5. For Nick Cole, I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you next week.